Have you ever noticed that you're investing all your energy into pursuing someone who simply doesn't reciprocate? Perhaps it's that person who responds to your messages with single words, who never has time for you, but you still keep waiting for the day they'll magically change and value you. If this sounds familiar, now is the time to stop and ask yourself, why am I choosing someone who isn't choosing me? Carl Jung, one of the fathers of analytical psychology, explained that these destructive relationship dynamics aren't coincidental. According to Jung, pursuing someone who doesn't want you reflects a profound inner imbalance, a manifestation of what he called the shadow, that part of us containing insecurities, fears, and unconscious patterns that prevent us from connecting with our true self. Think about it for a moment. That feeling of anxiety when you're waiting for a response that never comes, that emptiness you feel when you realize you're always the one initiating conversations, always the one suggesting meeting up. This isn't love, it's emotional dependence. And according to Jung, this dependence is rooted in a profound disconnection from your own value. Rejection hurts, yes, but what's really destroying your self-esteem isn't the rejection itself, but the persistence in seeking validation from someone who has already demonstrated they cannot or will not give it to you. Jung explained this brilliantly when he talked about the abandonment complex. This complex forms in the early stages of our lives and conditions us to seek approval where it doesn't exist, unconsciously recreating painful patterns from the past. Have you ever wondered why you can clearly see when a friend is in a toxic relationship, but you can't apply that same clarity to your own life? Jung explained that this happens because we project onto others qualities and defects that we don't want to or cannot recognize in ourselves. When you chase someone who doesn't value you, you're projecting an ideal onto that person, a fantasy that has little to do with reality. Let me tell you something that perhaps no one has told you before. Your value doesn't increase when you finally get the attention of someone who ignores you. In fact, the opposite happens. Each time you settle for crumbs of attention, each time you accept vague explanations or inconsistent behaviors, you're sending a powerful message to your unconscious. I don't deserve more than this. Jung described the individuation process as the path toward integrating all parts of our psyche to become complete and authentic beings. This process is impossible when you're trapped in the cycle of chasing someone who doesn't value you, because all your psychic energy is being channeled outward toward that person instead of toward your own growth. Now, think about that relationship or situation where you feel you're giving much more than you're receiving. How does it really make you feel? Not what you tell yourself to justify it, but what you feel deep within your being. Do you feel peace? Do you feel that you're growing? Or do you feel anxiety, insecurity, and a constant state of alertness? Jung taught us that persistent negative emotions are messengers from our unconscious, signals that something isn't aligned with our true essence. When you ignore these signals and continue pursuing someone who doesn't reciprocate, you're ignoring a fundamental part of your being that's trying to protect you. The uncomfortable truth is that when you chase someone who doesn't value you, you're not only damaging your self-esteem, but you're also feeding a pattern that Jung called neurosis. Neurosis, according to him, arises when there's a conflict between what we consciously want and what we unconsciously need. Consciously, you want that person to choose you, but unconsciously, what you really need is to choose yourself. Choosing yourself sounds simple, right? But how many of us actually do it? Jung spoke of self-realization as the ultimate purpose of human life, that state in which we recognize and honor who we truly are, without masks or conditioning. And this path begins with a radical decision, to stop pursuing what harms us and start nurturing what helps us grow. Do you know what happens when you finally make that decision? When you stop investing all your emotional energy in someone who doesn't reciprocate, that energy returns to you. You start noticing things about yourself that you had forgotten. Talents, passions, dreams that were set aside while you were busy chasing someone who wasn't choosing you. Jung described synchronicity as those moments when the outer world seems to magically align with your inner world. And that's precisely what happens when you decide to honor your worth. Synchronicities begin to appear. The right people arrive, opportunities present themselves, and you start experiencing a flow in your life that previously seemed impossible. But let's be honest, letting go of someone, especially when you've invested so much time and emotional energy, isn't easy. Jung recognized that confronting our shadow, those dark parts of ourselves that we'd prefer to ignore, is one of the hardest tasks we can undertake. But he also knew it's absolutely necessary. Consider this. Every time you allow yourself to be in a dynamic where you're chasing someone who doesn't value you, you're reinforcing the unconscious belief that you're not enough. And that belief, over time, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You begin to present yourself to the world from that energy of lack, which attracts more situations and people that confirm that negative belief about yourself. How do you break this cycle? Jung offered us clear guidance through consciousness. Bring to the light of consciousness what's operating from the shadows. Ask yourself, what am I really looking for in this person who doesn't value me? What old wound am I trying to heal through this relationship? What part of myself am I denying by accepting less than I deserve? The simple act of asking yourself these questions already begins to change something within you. Because as Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. It's not fate that keeps you chasing someone who doesn't want you. It's unconscious patterns that, once recognized, lose much of their power over you. Now, what happens to your self-esteem during this process? Jung understood self-esteem not as a superficial feeling of personal worth, but as a deep connection with what he called the self, the regulating center of the psyche that integrates both the conscious and unconscious. When you chase someone who doesn't value you, you're disconnecting from that center, fragmenting your psyche and generating a profound internal conflict. Think about all the times you've ignored your intuition, that inner voice telling you something wasn't right in that relationship. Every time you do that, you're weakening your connection with yourself. You're teaching your psyche that it can't trust its own signals. And that, over time, erodes your self-esteem from its deepest root. Jung had a fascinating vision of human relationships. He believed that our most significant relationships act as mirrors reflecting parts of ourselves that we cannot see directly. When you're in a relationship where you constantly feel undervalued, that's a mirror reflecting your own lack of value toward yourself. What would happen if, instead of chasing someone who doesn't want you, you began to treat yourself with the same love, respect, and consideration you expect from others? Jung would describe this as a form of integration, a process through which we recover and accept parts of ourselves that we have rejected or ignored. When you begin to choose yourself, the world around you changes in surprising ways. People who didn't value you suddenly seem to lose their appeal. You no longer feel that compulsive need to win their approval. Instead, you begin to attract relationships based on mutual respect, balance, and give and take. This change doesn't happen because the outer world has changed, but because you've changed inside. Jung described this as a shift in your psychic constellations, those internal structures that determine how you perceive and respond to the world. When your energy is no longer focused on chasing someone who doesn't value you, that energy can be channeled toward your own growth and well-being. There's something deeply liberating in realizing that your worth doesn't depend on validation from a specific person. As Jung taught, we all carry within us an innate potential for wholeness and self-realization. This potential doesn't increase or decrease depending on who pays attention to you or ignores you. It's inherent to your being. So why do we find it so difficult to let go of those who don't value us? Jung would say it's because we're trapped in what he called complexes. Complexes are groupings of charged thoughts, memories, and emotions that operate from our unconscious, influencing our behavior without us being fully aware of it. The "I'm not enough" complex is particularly powerful and can keep you trapped in relationships where you constantly seek to prove your worth. Each rejection, each sign of lack of interest, feeds this complex, making it stronger and more dominant in your psyche. The good news is that, as Jung discovered, complexes can be recognized, understood, and integrated. It's not a quick or simple process, but it's possible. And it begins with the conscious decision to stop feeding those harmful patterns. Imagine for a moment how your life would be if all the energy you've invested in chasing someone who doesn't want you had been invested in your own growth, in your passions, in reciprocal relationships that nurture you. Where would you be now? It's a question that might hurt, but it can also motivate you to make significant changes from this moment on. Jung firmly believed in the human capacity for transformation, to evolve beyond our conditioning and wounds. He believed that within each of us, there is a natural impulse toward integration and wholeness, what he called the individuation process. This process activates when we stop looking outside for what we can only find within ourselves. When you chase someone who doesn't want you, you're deviating from your own path of individuation. You're channeling your vital energy in a direction that, instead of helping you grow and expand, keeps you trapped in cyclical patterns of lack and rejection. Jung also spoke extensively about the importance of the shadow in our psyche. The shadow contains those parts of ourselves that we have repressed or denied, often because they don't fit our ideal image of ourselves. When we don't recognize and accept our shadow, we tend to project it onto others, which can manifest in unbalanced relationships, where we subject ourselves to treatment that no human being deserves. Accepting that you've been chasing someone who doesn't value you can be painful, but it's also the first step toward freedom. It's the recognition of a part of your shadow that you've been avoiding, your fear of abandonment, your belief that you're not enough, your need for external validation. Jung taught us that true growth occurs not when we avoid pain, but when we consciously move through it. Each time you allow yourself to feel the pain of not being reciprocated, instead of avoiding it by chasing more intensely, you're transforming that pain into wisdom. How does this wisdom manifest? In the ability to establish clear boundaries, in the discernment to recognize when a relationship is unbalanced, in the strength to walk away from situations that undermine your self-esteem, even when part of you wants to stay. Jung described the anima and animus as archetypes representing the feminine and masculine energies present in each person, regardless of their gender. When these energies are unbalanced, we can fall into harmful relationship patterns, such as obsessively chasing someone who doesn't reciprocate. Balancing these energies requires deep inner work. It requires cultivating both your capacity to give, traditionally associated with the feminine, and your capacity to establish boundaries and respect yourself, traditionally associated with the masculine. When these energies are in harmony, you naturally move away from relationships that don't honor your worth. The process of stopping the pursuit of someone who doesn't want you and beginning to choose yourself isn't linear. There will be advances and setbacks, moments of clarity and moments of confusion. Jung understood this and reminded us that the path to wholeness isn't a straight line, but a spiral that sometimes seems to take us back to the same point, but always from a higher level of consciousness. What can you do today to begin this process? Start by paying attention. Observe your patterns, your reactions, your thoughts when you interact with that person who doesn't value you as you deserve. Not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself. Consciousness, as Jung said, is the first step toward transformation. Then ask yourself, what do I really need? Not what you think you need from that specific person, but what your soul longs for. Genuine connection, feeling valued, emotional security. Once you identify these needs, you can begin to satisfy them yourself and seek them in relationships that have the potential to be reciprocal. Self-compassion is essential in this process. Jung understood that harsh self-judgment only reinforces negative complexes and patterns. Instead of punishing yourself for having chased someone who didn't value you, recognize that you were doing the best you could with the tools and awareness you had at that time, and now, with greater awareness, you can choose differently. A technique that Jung found particularly powerful was dialogue with different parts of oneself. Try talking to that part of you that clings to someone who doesn't value you. Ask it what it needs, what it fears, what it's really seeking. This internal dialogue can reveal deep motivations you didn't even know you had. Jung also believed in the healing power of symbols and rituals. Creating a personal ritual to free yourself from that energy of pursuit can be tremendously effective. Perhaps write a letter that you won't send, expressing everything you feel, and then burn it as a symbol of liberation. Or create a visual representation of yourself, free and empowered, and place it where you can see it regularly. As you begin to choose yourself, you'll notice subtle but profound changes. Your energy will rise, your intuition will sharpen. You'll begin to notice signs of unbalanced behaviors that you previously overlooked. And most importantly, you'll start to feel a new sense of inner peace and freedom. This freedom doesn't come from finally getting the attention of the person you've been chasing, but from freeing yourself from the need for that specific attention. As Jung taught, true psychological freedom arises when we free ourselves from the projections and expectations we've placed on others and recognize that what we're really seeking is a deeper connection with ourselves. The relationships we have with others are reflections of the relationship we have with ourselves. When you choose yourself, when you honor your intrinsic worth, you'll naturally begin to attract relationships that reflect that new self-valuation. Not because you're doing something to attract them, but because you're no longer willing to settle for less. Jung described this process as synchronicity, those seemingly casual but deeply meaningful moments that appear to be coordinated by a greater intelligence. As you align with your true self, synchronicities begin to manifest. People, opportunities, and experiences that resonate with your new vibration begin to appear in your life. But this process requires patience. It requires trusting that, even if you can't see the complete path, each step you take toward your own valuation is taking you exactly where you need to be. As Jung said, the shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. This means that your path to freeing yourself from the dynamic of chasing someone who doesn't value you will be unique, shaped by your personal history, your specific wounds, and your particular strengths. There's no single method that works for everyone, but there are universal principles that can guide you. Awareness, compassion, courage, and commitment to your own growth. The world won't always understand your decision to choose yourself. We live in a culture that often romanticizes relentless pursuit as proof of true love. Jung was very critical of these cultural distortions, recognizing how they can lead us to confuse genuine love with neurosis and dependence. True love, according to Jung, doesn't diminish, but increases your sense of wholeness. It doesn't make you feel anxious or insecure, but secure and at peace. It doesn't require you to become someone else to be accepted, but celebrates who you truly are. And most importantly, it's reciprocal. It's not something you have to chase or beg for. When you finally internalize this truth, something extraordinary will happen. You'll stop feeling attracted to those who cannot or will not value you. It won't be a conscious decision to avoid them, but a natural lack of resonance. Like a magnet that has changed its polarity, you'll no longer feel attracted to what previously attracted you compulsively. This is the true miracle of choosing yourself. Not only do you free yourself from the pattern of chasing someone who doesn't want you, but you fundamentally transform your energy field, naturally attracting experiences and relationships that reflect your new level of self-esteem. The question then is not whether you should stop chasing someone who doesn't value you. The answer is obviously yes. But are you willing to do the inner work necessary to free yourself from the need for that specific validation? Are you ready to face the parts of yourself that you've been avoiding through the distraction of that pursuit? Jung believed that each of us has the potential for wholeness, for the integration of all parts of our psyche into a coherent and harmonious whole. This potential doesn't depend on someone's specific choosing or valuing us. It's inherent to our being, waiting to be recognized and realized. The path isn't easy. There will be moments when you'll feel the temptation to return to old patterns, to send that message, to seek once more that validation you know won't come fully. In those moments, remember Jung's words, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." Your worth doesn't diminish because someone doesn't know how to appreciate it. Your light doesn't shine less because someone chooses not to see it. Your love isn't less valuable because someone cannot or will not fully receive it. These are truths you need to deeply internalize if you want to free yourself from the cycle of chasing someone who doesn't value you. And when you finally free yourself from that cycle, you'll discover that what seemed like an ending, the end of that specific relationship or dynamic, is actually a beginning. The beginning of a more authentic and loving relationship with yourself. The beginning of a new way of relating to others from integrity and mutual respect. The beginning of a life aligned with your true essence. As Jung taught us, the greatest act of courage is to be true to yourself. And the first step to being true to yourself is to stop chasing validation from those who cannot or will not give it to you. It's a step that may seem small, but has the power to transform your entire life. If this message has resonated with you, if you've recognized patterns in your own life where you've been chasing someone who doesn't value you, I want you to know that you're not alone. This is a common human pattern, rooted in deep wounds and conditioning. But the fact that you've recognized it is already a huge step toward your liberation. Before I finish, I want to leave you with a practical exercise inspired by Jung's work. During the next week, every time you feel the impulse to seek attention or validation from someone who consistently doesn't give it to you, stop. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, what am I really looking for here? What deep need am I trying to satisfy? Then, consider how you might satisfy that need yourself, or through relationships that are already reciprocal and nurturing in your life. Remember that you're on a journey, not in a race. Each small step you take toward your own valuation is significant. Each time you choose not to chase someone who doesn't value you, you're strengthening your self-esteem. Each time you treat yourself with the respect and love you deserve, you're rewriting the neural patterns in your brain that determine how you see yourself and how you allow others to treat you. Jung taught us that the ultimate purpose of human life is individuation, that process through which we become complete, integrated, and authentic individuals. This process cannot occur when we're trapped in the dynamic of chasing someone who doesn't value us, because that dynamic keeps us fragmented, divided between what we truly need and what we think we want. The good news is that you can break that cycle at any moment. You can choose here and now to begin a new chapter where you are the protagonist of your life, not a secondary character in someone else's life. You can decide in this instant that you will no longer invest your precious life energy in chasing crumbs of attention when you deserve a feast of genuine love. And when you make that decision, when you truly internalize it, the universe will begin to respond. Not because there's an external magic operating, but because, as Jung said, the exterior always reflects the interior. When you change inside, the world around you has no choice but to change as well. So today I invite you to take that first step, to choose yourself, to stop chasing someone who doesn't want you and start nurturing relationships that reflect you in your full potential. Not because you need others to be complete, but because you deserve relationships that celebrate the completeness that already exists within you. If this message has touched something in you, if you felt it was speaking directly to your experience, I'd love to hear from you. Share in the comments your own story, your reflections, or simply a heart if this has resonated with you. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to take their own first step toward freedom. And don't forget to share this video with someone you think might benefit from this message. Sometimes, the right words at the right time can be the seed of a profound transformation. Be that person who plants that seed for someone else. Thank you for being here, for dedicating this time to your own growth. Remember that the simple fact of being willing to look at these dynamics in your life is already an act of courage. And that courage is exactly what you need to free yourself from the trap of chasing someone who doesn't value you and begin to build a life based on authentic self-love. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring together the fascinating path of self-discovery and personal transformation. Until then, remember Jung's words. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes.